everybody, to the MXP Pod Episode 1. I'm your host, Jackie Riess, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm actually a Minnesotan. I'm not a Canadian, which is good and bad, I guess, right? I did spend one summer up in Canada racing WMX, so I got my feet wet in the Canadian Series in the summer of 2019, and that is how I met my two lovely co-hosts for the evening, Brodeur and Lindsey Bradley. How's it going tonight, ladies?
Doing good.
How are you?
Good, thanks. I guess we're just going to take a turn here and talk about dirt bikes, something that isn't really seen in this industry, just girls talking about dirt bikes, and we're going to do it a little differently here at MXP. So I guess let's just dive straight into Anaheim 1. So if there's one word that you guys could use to describe the racing this weekend, what would that be?
I think it was a hectic, but nothing that we can't expect from a round one of any series, especially Supercross. We see that happen every year. The first round is just a little crazy, so I think that pretty much sums up A1 as well.
Yeah, I would second that. Chaos was a big one. It was nothing but, and I think I can second with Ev too. And you can't really expect anything less than that too. It's round one. Everyone's got the round one jitters, but also is ready to go. So I think everyone was feeling it.
Yeah. So do you guys feel like that when we go to race our first round, or the past couple summers when you guys have gone to race the first round of WMX, do you feel those round one jitters? Do you feel it in yourself and also as the group as a whole?
I think so. I think it's impossible to not feel it. It's just so much pressure. Well, it's just so much pressure coming into the first round, and you never really know what to expect, who's going to show up, how your speed compares, what the track's going to look like. There's so many different variables that you can't expect and you can't know for sure. So it's always super stressful and you never really know. So I think those jitters are always there. They've always been there for me, and I don't think they'll ever go away.
Yeah, I think I'm the same too. I always get them, especially round one, but I don't think they'll ever go away. It's something that you just kind of have to learn to shake as the year goes on. And it does get better progressively over the year, but first round is always a doozy.
Yeah, no kidding. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised to hear that, Ev, because you've won this championship, in Canada 6 times and numerous, Walton Grand National Championships. It's kind of surprising that even a veteran like yourself is still nervous at that first round of racing. Do you think round one really matters in the grand scheme of things? When you guys are racing, do you feel like your results at round one really dictate how the rest of the season's going to go, or do you just brush it off it's not going to matter?
I don't think the results itself really matter for the first round. You don't want to tank it right off the start, because then you have to spend the whole season catching up, and that's just not fun. But I think the place you take us in the first round and the impact you have on the first round does have an effect on the rest of the series. It's kind of where personally I tried to always go out on top so I can my place and set a continuity for the season. But I don't think it's really what matters in the end. So much can happen, and like I said, you just have to tank it, and if you're not going to win, just try to do your best and keep it on 2 wheels. I think that's the most important part. You don't want to get injured or something from the get-go, like we've seen this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Being consistent and on 2 wheels is a big thing, especially mentally for me. If I get the ball rolling at a decent speed, then I feel like I can stay there all year. But if I start off on the wrong foot, then it's kind of just snowballing downhill from there.
There's a difference between having the jitters and being nervous and putting in importance into the first round, and there's a difference between feeling that and controlling that. So I do feel the jitters, but once I get on the track, I'm able to calm myself and take a step back and realize that like you said, it doesn't impact the old championship, whereas you see newbies kind of riders, they don't always realize. So when they have the opportunity, they'll go above and beyond to try to get it without really thinking about the fact that they'll have so many more opportunities, and then they just tank that one. And I think we saw it last year with Jet Lawrence, and he was up front, and we were all super impressed because it was his first one, but he wanted the first so bad, and he ended up making a mistake and just ruining the whole thing. And it's kind of what happened with Sexton again this weekend, you know, like he had a chance to maybe win and he tried so hard and it just, you know, it ended up badly. So I think the first round sometimes it's better to take a step back and settle for a second, knowing you will have so many more opportunities in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely felt like that when I came up and raced WMX in Canada. Like the first race, I think I crashed more times that race than I had the whole rest of the summer prior. So like I get where these guys are coming from. Like it's hard to keep yourself together, like especially if it's new, you're feeling frantic. But I think it's a good point of that, you know, the people that made it through healthy this weekend are like should be happy with just making it through healthy and making it through with points. Like we saw way too many injuries, way too many crashes, takeouts, a whole chaos in itself over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So since this is a Canadian platform, I kind of want to start out with Canadian highlights. Cole Thompson racing 250 West actually very much surprised me. When I first saw the news, it was pretty cool. He actually took over the MXP Instagram for a while. But he's on a Yamaha, and it's very interesting for me to see him on a Yamaha. He's been on KTM for a number of years. You've gotten to know him over those years, I'm sure, with your involvement with KTM as well. How do you think the Yamaha will fit Cole as a rider, and how do you think this experience will be for him?
It's definitely going to change. I personally, we kind of left the same change this year, but you know, it's kind of a cheap change considering it's still the same basic bike. But you know, spending so many years on the same bike, on the same team, with the same people, and then having to change, it's definitely an adjustment. But sometimes that's what you need to, you know, take your career to your next step. So I think Cole just wanted to experience something a little different. He was at that point in his career. So and he's always been like this Supercross guy. You know, when we had Supercross in Canada, he was always top one. So if there was someone to represent Canada in Supercross, I don't see any better fit than Cole. So I'm super excited to see him out there and see how well he can do. He did super good this weekend. I'm hoping for a top 10 from him shortly and even top 5 by the end of the season. I think we all know he can do it, but it's definitely a change of pace racing Supercross. You know, like he's done a Supercross here, but it's not the same game. So I'm excited to see how he ends up doing. But I have full faith in him, and it's sad to see him go from Orange. But I think the opportunity was just too good to let go.
Yeah, Lindsey, we were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier. This opportunity for him racing Supercross in the US might bring him an opportunity in Canada. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I fully think that he's fully capable of getting around in Canada. I think this is a contract year for a lot of those guys, and he would be, obviously, he's one of the top guys to pick from. But yeah, going back to the Supercross on the weekend, I was very impressed on the way that he rode, and I don't foresee him out of the top 10 anytime in the near future. So yeah, I'm hoping that he can get that done. And if, like I've said, if anyone can do it from Canada, it'd be the number 1 Supercross guy, and it'd be Cole Thompson. I just am so shocked that he's on a 250 and not a 450, to be brutally honest with you.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too.
To be honest, like I'm not sure Cole's plan is to come back for a ride in Canada fully. Like, you know, he had stuff in the works and he decided to let go of it and change. So maybe, you know, I feel like at the point in his career where he is, like he's done it all, you know, he's won championship, he's raced. So I think maybe he's just looking for something new. So will he ever come back to Canada? I guess we don't know yet, and we'll have to see. But I'm excited to see where this part takes them.
And that's a very good point, actually. Great question. Never know, I guess.
Yeah, never know.
Well, it's cool. We've been seeing people branch out from Canada a lot more. Dylan Wright, of course, with his stint in the MXGP, and cool to see Cole down here as well. 14th in the main this weekend, but like you guys said, top 10s are totally within his means. And I was watching some of his interviews with Direct Motocross, and it sounds like he finally has his ducks in a row. He's settled, and he's actually ready to go train again. So it seems like it was pretty hectic couple of weeks there before A1, before the first race, like it always is. But I agree. I hope to see him improve, and for the sake of Canada and Canadian motocross, I think he'll do a great job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and coming into the first round, for sure. Like I don't think you can do your best performance coming into a new series, a new type of races, a new type of track. I don't think you can come in flying because it's just so much to get used to. So I believe it can only go up from here. And you already did super good. So I'm hopeful for the next few weekends.
For sure. So we also had a couple kids from Canada in the KTM Junior Challenge, which is actually pretty cool. Charlee Nickerson from Nova Scotia finished 8th overall, and Charlee Long, a little girl, finished 13th in the main, and she's from Alberta. So that's pretty cool to see those kids racing in California, but man, what a hike.
Oh,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was just going to say, I remember doing KTM juniors as a kid, and it was the one in Montreal. It wasn't like a racing at those big series, but just that was enough to like be crazy. And I still have like souvenirs, like a helmet, and that's like a gear from that time. And I still have a bunch of pictures, and I know it's absolutely crazy. And look where it brought me today. So I'm excited and to see Canadians go out there and do even more than I had the opportunity to do. I think it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think it's a great program, and now they're all on E50s, which is pretty cool. And yeah, you don't very often see them Canadians that go down to, well, even the States, but let alone California. But yeah, so it was nice to see those guys from out west and out east representing all of Canada, really.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. When I was a little kid, tried to apply. I put so much effort into my application to race here in Minneapolis. And they ended up not picking me. And they ended up picking this kid that I beat every weekend. And it made me so mad that this kid that was slower than me was going to go and beat me at the KTM. I was just so upset. But at that time, they weren't really including girls. Like, Ev, I'm a couple of years older than you, so the program may have changed a bit in those few years in between, but it's really cool, in my opinion, that they always include little girls at this point now.
Yeah, for my part, it was in Canada as well, so probably a little different. But yeah, for sure, it's great to see girls getting there more and more. There's so much drama going on in the States right now about girls racing and WMX, and it's just absolutely insane. And to be honest, I don't think any of it is unreasonable. I've myself quit going to the States because there's just nothing really left to race. I've raced the good old race like WMX races, and we were on pro days and stuff, and that was amazing. But then all of a sudden it just died, and it's going on a lot in the States right now. So to see those opportunities, it's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in part of a couple of those groups on Facebook and Instagram, and it's just like there's a lot of passion behind it, and a lot of girls really want an opportunity, not only for themselves, but for the future generation. So like you said, it is cool that girls are getting opportunities in other places as well.
Yeah.
So let's move on to class by class action at Anaheim 1, 250 West. Most notably, the crashes and the injuries for me, of course, gut-wrenching for Colt Nichols with 2 broken arms. Jalek Swall had a nasty crash, but the crash that really stood out the most to me and was like the most wild story, in my opinion, was Carson Brown. He got a lever to the face, to the mouth, and he lost a tooth, but the track crew found his tooth, which is just so, like, hey, buddy, here's your tooth back. Like, blows my mind.
Which, to be honest, it's not like a finger. It's not like you have a certain amount of like hours to sew it back. I think like when you lose a tooth, like it's kind of dead. Like, you don't need to find it. It's just a bad memory. So he'll have a keepsake from that for quite a while. But yeah.
You know what? I have a story kind of like that. I crashed at, Jack, you probably have heard of it, but Tillsonburg used to have an indoor track in Canada. And I crashed there when I was a kid on a 65 and knocked my teeth out. And the same thing, my dad found 1 tooth on the ground and 1 was stuck to my sweater. But yeah, he did find the other one on the ground, and I'm sure it wasn't within 5 feet of his distance. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. You can find a tooth and not, like I've said, a finger or something that you're gonna maybe potentially be able to sew back on.
Yeah, a tooth is just useless. It's funny to find it back.
But like, just the fact that they're like, hey, here's your tooth, like you said, like what's the point, like why do I need my tooth, but also like that's really nice of them to give him his tooth back.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'd rather they pick it up than someone receive it as bruised, you know, like you're just riding, the tooth comes at you.
No kidding. So the main event, like just the start of the main event was so bizarre to me. Just Hunter Lawrence in the press conference said that the gate flinched. Other people have thought that just the riders flinched. It caught Joe Shimoda and a few other guys in the gate at the beginning of the race. Have you guys ever hit the gate?
Never.
Oh yeah.
Not once.
Yeah.
Never.
Not once. And thank God for it, but not once. Yeah.
That may be because you're not quick enough on the trigger.
Oh, okay.
I've hit my fair share of gates. Sometimes, you know, like it flickers, or, you know, something happens, or just some gates don't fall and you're the unlucky one who gets stuck in it. But I didn't know if it was a mechanical issue, but I think the first race jitters we were talking about, I think that certainly played a huge part in those guys, Shimoda and all, hitting the gate, because I don't think it was 100% just mechanical, because, you know, not everybody hit it. So the people who did hit it, I think, that was jitters and being excited for the first round.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes
they were trigger happy.
Sometimes you don't even put it in gear before the gate drops. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I heard too. Yeah.
Hard to hit the gate when you're not in gear.
Yeah, I guess so.
I've definitely flinched before, but I've never actually hit the gate. Yeah. But I've flinched 100 times or more.
Yeah,
obviously.
No. I just let go of the whole thing, so it's go miss or pass, you know, go pass.
Again, that first race at Gopher Dunes, my first summer up there, again, first race jitters, I just rammed into the gate, like right next to Isabel, and she like just kind of looked over me. It was like significantly far in advance. It wasn't even close to the gate actually dropping. I just rammed into the gate and I was like, wow, like I'm a nut job. But like again, like these guys, like it's relatable. It's totally relatable to, you know, what we've been through, what other races have been through. I guess it doesn't just totally go away once you're in the pro class.
Yeah, and like whenever those moments happen, I feel like I call them brain farts, but it's always like you stand there a few seconds like, what the hell just happened? And then you're like, oh no, I gotta go, you know, like that time when you mentioned I started neutral, that's definitely what happened. Like I dropped the clutch and the bike did not move, and it took me like a few seconds to be like, what happened? And then once I realized, I was like, it doesn't matter what happened, like I just need to go. And you know, like you have to be quick on that, but I think the guys covered pretty good, but it definitely messes up your whole race when it's such a short time. And you know, like you started off like that from the back of the pack on a tight track. It's not easy, and definitely not something you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the 250 main, Ev, who impressed you the most?
Jesus, you're hitting me with a good one. I don't even remember who won.
Christian Craig. Christian Craig.
And yeah, Christian. For sure.
I think it's pretty easy to like say that he was impressive. Like he
yeah.
just full veteran status, no jitters, no nothing, like just ran his race and was up front and hammered away. Like I think that's pretty impressive. But I was also pretty impressed with Hammaker. He really stuck in there. Like I had absolutely no expectations because he's ridden Supercross only a handful of times, a handful of races. So I was actually really impressed that he stayed up front for the whole time, put a lot of heart and determination into it, and finished second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, agreed. But you know, you mentioned it, and to be honest, I'm a fan of Christian Craig, and we were just talking about that with me and my boyfriend when we're watching the races. And you know how sometimes when guys become fathers and stuff, they'll start to decline, and you know, like they race a little less, they're a little less focused, and they definitely don't go out and win races. And he just got his third kid, and he's doing better than he's ever had. So I think that's pretty amazing, and that's pretty cool, and tells a lot about this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that. I also was very impressed with Hunter Lawrence. I mean, considering he hit the gate, he came from the back of the pack and he rode an amazing race. Made a pass for, tried to make a pass for second on the last lap in the last corner. So that was pretty impressive in my point of view too. But I think I'll always be a diehard Christian Craig fan for sure.
Yeah.
It's hard not to be, especially when
Absolutely.
he's
Oh, yeah.
racing these kids that, you know, are significantly younger than him, and he's still out here just showing what he still has. And I think, do you guys think he'll win the championship? No.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I think so. He's still he was so smooth and confident and like mistake-less this weekend. I think it's hard to take the win away from that.
Yeah, for sure. I had pretty high expectations for Colt Nichols too, so that's kind of a disappointing factor. But yeah, I think Christian Craig will. I think he's kind of got it on lock now. He's got some momentum going after round one, and I think he's kind of that's where he needs to be, and I think he will be.
Mm-hmm. So moving on, who fell a little bit short in your opinion in the 250 West class first moto of the year?
That's a hard sell. I mean,
Yeah,
it's hard in that class to find someone that falls short because all those guys are putting everything they have into every single moto. I was more or less just disappointed I was really pumped for Colt Nichols, and I knew that he had the speed and stuff to win a championship. So I was pretty disappointed that he crashed in the heat race. And as far as I know, in the article I read, he'll likely be out for the year now, which is super unfortunate. But yeah, I think that was really my only disappointment in that class. Everything else was the race was awesome. Like it was a really good race.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to pick.
yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. I think anybody who didn't get to finish the race is someone who fell short this weekend. You know, because the first round, like I said this like earlier, it doesn't mean that much, and you know, like the track was super difficult. Those rollers, man, there was something else, and it was two sets of them. So I think that first race wasn't the whole dictator of the rest of the season, but any guys who was taken out on round one, it's just very unlucky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was kind of disappointed by Thrasher, someone who had won 2 races last year. But again, he's pretty early in his career. He could just have those pre-race jitters. He was, you know, hitting the gate, colliding with Derek Kelly. And so just kind of scatterbrained in my opinion. So I look to see him improve his composure over the next course of the season. And I think that he'll be just fine. Just first race craziness.
Yeah, I think he
for
will be
sure.
too. And part of that, like you said, Jackie, I think that really got to him because now that you mention it, I don't think he won a race or an overall until like mid-season or the end of the season last year. So I think he's one of those guys that the pre-race or not pre-race, like the first race jitters really get to him.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to 450, first round of 450s for the year. Crazy field, crazy stacked field. It was the Honda show in heats 1 and 2, of course. But I was actually pretty surprised at who did and who didn't make the main. How about you guys?
Yeah, for sure. There were some big names that did not make the main. But yeah, so that was impressive, and I think that's not gonna happen many times. And sometimes, you know, I think it was a big crash at the beginning of the 250 LCQ, so a bunch of guys were taken out by that, and you just don't recover from a crash in the LCQ, I believe. So I think a bunch of guys who were supposed to be there just weren't able to. But yeah, it was nice to see Ryan Brees, his move to the last pass and how pumped he was. I think that was super cool, and yeah, that was pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can agree. There were some big names that didn't make it in the main that should have been there, and that's kind of just the bottom line. I think next weekend will be a different story once they get their first race out of the way, and hopefully can make her into the main. It would make for some awesome racing for sure.
Yeah, and I think those guys that didn't make the main now have this chip on their shoulder or this extra motivation to go out there and make it happen because they know that they belong there. I personally play fantasy. I had Bogle picked in fantasy, and I was just purely disappointed in how he just came together. I don't remember who he's trying to pass, but in the whoops, it was like slow motion, like roll one. Okay, now we're falling, now we're stopping. And I was just like, you know, racking my brain because I had him in fantasy. But I'm sure that is something that he has absolutely learned from and probably won't miss a main the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the main event, once we got our guys into the main event or didn't get them into the event, was way more action than I think we ever could have asked for. Like, I can't even tell you each pass, each takeout, each crash. Like, there's a lot going on. But I think the main figure in a lot of that was Chase Sexton. What did you guys think of Chase's performance last weekend?
He definitely gets my A+. He was my favorite one out there, and I did a lap time analysis with my Pittsburgh crew. And the data doesn't lie. Every single lap where Chase Sexton did not make a mistake or tip over or anything, every single lap that he was on two wheels for the full lap, he was the fastest, like by a bit. So I think that just does not lie and proves a lot about where he is. So now he's just missing a bit of consistency and maybe experience and stuff, but he definitely if he can keep the same speed but be more calmed and preserved and take some of that veteran lifestyle from Kenny, I think he's definitely going to be up there like really quick.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a heavy hitter and hard to beat, especially having his teammate there with him, like the veteran guy. Yeah, I think though he's going to be hard to beat big time. That's all I can say about him. He was my favorite.
Yeah, he definitely made it interesting at the front of the pack. Who impressed you guys the most? Was it Chase or was it somebody else?
Definitely Chase.
Yeah, Chase 100%.
Just based on his speed?
Yeah, I was watching him ride, and in comparison to last year, he was kind of like pushing and pushing and pushing for first, and then he got hurt. So I think with him being a little bit more patient and with him having a veteran guy like Kenny to be teammates with, he's learning a lot from him. And you could see by the way that he was riding that he was being a little bit more patient than he was last year and kind of just flowing and getting into a good flow behind him. And I'm pretty bummed that he fell, honestly, because I think he could have made that maybe second to last lap push and maybe got by him. But yeah, I was super impressed by him for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
and through it all he was super resilient. Like, he kept coming back after his mistakes and he made so many passes, and at some point he was super far, and I know like a bunch of people fell, but he still ended up ninth, and I think that's pretty good. Not fifth, sorry. I think he was up to ninth at some point, but he finished fifth, which is like amazing considering the amount of time he was on the ground. So if he can improve on that and stay on two wheels, I think we've got a winner in our hands.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it too. I was just kind of looking at it like, oh man, this is compounding, like crash after crash after crash. But it is a good point of that each time he got back up, he finished the race. He didn't get 22nd. So I guess that's a good way to look at it, and an impression that he left on us from the weekend. I was personally impressed with Kenny. It seems like recently he's always like, yeah, this was going bad. And then the first race of the year he wins. He did it in motocross. He did it this year. He said he was sick in December. And so it makes it really easy for me to be impressed by him. Like, man, he's overcome all these things in the past month or two. And now he's winning and by quite a significant amount, partly because of the chaos behind him, but partly because of just his pure talent. And in his interviews, it sounded like he even impressed himself. So it's hard not to be impressed by someone who impresses themselves, I feel like. So Kenny was my pick for the 450 class last weekend.
Yeah, sure. It was amazing. I saw a video of how sick he was in December, and it's crazy to think that he went from that to winning this weekend. And the fact that he didn't put any pressure on himself, I think is what matters the most. And maybe speed wise he wasn't the fastest, but he's the one who is the most consistent and stayed on two wheels. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. You don't win races by having the fastest lap time, so it doesn't really matter who was the fastest this race, because he went out there and he won it. But it definitely has maybe more pressure for the next few rounds.
I think so too.
So one of the big storylines going into the weekend is Barsha going to make it a four-peat? Is he going to win 4 openers in a row? Did you guys think he was going to do it?
Well, at one point I thought it was gonna happen. Like the race started and I was like, oh yeah, there's no way. And then guys started falling left and right. And I started telling myself like, okay, wait, like it might actually happen. I think at some point he was third or second, and I was like, okay, like he's not far now. Like if those two guys something happened, like he could actually like do it for a fourth time in a row. But he managed, it didn't happen. So he stayed on two wheels, but it just didn't happen. But for a while, I kind of believed in it for a while.
Yeah, I think going into the weekend, I thought for sure. But I also knew that like Webb, Sexton, and Roxon and all those top guys, they were pretty heavy hitters and going to be hard to beat too. So I'm glad to see those guys up there. But it would have been cool had he made it a 4-peat, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I too thought he was going to do it. Like, just when you win something so many times, you just get this confidence, right? And this expectation with yourself that, yep, okay, I'm just going to go do that again. I'm just going to go win again. And I think his third, I think is still good enough. Like, you know, I'm going to consider it a win in my book, just with his confidence and going into the season. I think it was a great weekend for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He did ride really well, and he was one of the only guys that stayed on two wheels the whole time. So that was another bonus.
Yeah. I was going to say he avoided chaos, but he definitely didn't. He purchased some Team Pride merch to make up for that one. But
yeah,
to be expected.
It wasn't the worst one. It wasn't the worst one we saw, though. That Muskin and Stewart one was just. That's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, and he was so mad. So mad afterwards.
Oh yeah,
like I would be mad
to
too.
be expected. Yeah, to be expected. It was fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the bigger picture here going forward in the season, who do you think gained momentum for the series at the opening round?
I think, to be honest, I think Sexton. I think he learned a lot from that race, especially riding behind Kenny for all those laps. I just hope that he can keep it on two wheels. And if he can keep it on two wheels, I think he's got a lot of momentum and a lot of speed going into the season for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree for Chase. And then I also think Kenny, you know, like we said, he didn't have so many expectations coming in because he was really nervous about how he was feeling and stuff. So I think with how he pulled it this weekend, I think it's going to give him big confidence boost for the next few rounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm going to go with Webb. Like, very quiet night for him. And at one point, I just looked at the leaderboard and was like, oh my gosh, he's in second. Like, I just had absolutely no idea. And I think this is one of the best starts to a season for him. So I think that'll run in his favor. Like, we know that he comes on hot at the end of a series, but if he's already hot at the beginning, it could be dangerous, for everybody else.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you guys, I think that about does that for Anaheim 1. Looking forward to Oakland next weekend and regrouping with you guys next week. Thanks for joining me, and thank you everybody else for tuning in to the first episode of the MXP pod. We'll see you next week.